Hi, I'm Robin Vincent and welcome to the Molten Music Technology Labs here in a rather blustery Norfolk. Today we're looking at Reason 8. I love Reason. I always have. I was there when Rebirth first appeared on the burgeoning PC music market. I love the simplicity, the interface, the way you can just get straight in, start making music, move stuff about, and it just sounds fantastic. Reason sort of built on those ideas and remains one of the easiest bits of software to get noises out of. I have written entire album tracks in Reason, and in fact the Molten background music was produced in Reason. So, you know, I'm a bit of a fan. However, more recently it's taken a bit of a back seat because I've found things like Ableton and Native Instruments Machine just kind of easier to work with once projects get a bit more complex. So I kind of missed out on version 7 more or less altogether. But with version 8, the talk is all about the improved workflow, and I find that very interesting. So it's time to have another look and see how it's all going. In a nutshell, Reason is a cool bunch of analog synths and samplers and effects that can all be wired together in interesting and amazing ways, coupled together with an audio engine and all stuffed through a large mixer console. When you first open up a Reason demo song, it can seem remarkably bewildering. There's all this stuff clamoring on the screen to get your attention. There's this never-ending rack of stuff. There's this big mixer with 1,000 big gillion knobs on it. There's this sequencer page that's sort of going on down there. You've got this thing over here. It can be a bit overwhelming, to say the least. But actually, when you boil it down, there's just 3 things going on. There's this big mixer console, which everything runs through. There's your instrument rack, which is where everything is built and programmed. And there's your sequencer window. That's it. There's no really anything else you have to deal with, just these 3 spaces. It doesn't always fit on the screen well, but we'll have a look at that in a little bit. But personally, I find the interface actually quite exciting. It sort of throws itself at you saying, wow, look at all this stuff you can do. Look at all these wires and things. What is all that all about? And it kind of makes the whole thing feel exciting. It's like stepping in to a hardware studio where you can just start getting stuff and start plugging it together. And that, I think, is the draw of Reason, the way that it works differently to anything else, the way that it harks back to other things, and just gives this impression of excitement. So let's strip it back and have a quick tour of what it does. In the basic layout, you have your 3 things: the mixer, the rack, the sequencer. Some of the trouble I've had in the past is how these things really relate to each other, and finding myself getting lost in not knowing what refers to what, what's connected to what, and what I can expect to happen at any given moment. In Reason 8, that sort of workflow is something that they've really sorted out. So if we start off in our rack, there's a few things already there which are kind of part of the mixer, because absolutely everything that exists in Reason will be in this rack. So we'll ignore those to start with, and we'll start by using our browser over here on the left, which again is new to Reason 8, which just lists all the stuff that you can use. So let's take a synth like the Subtractor analog synthesizer, and we will drag and drop that in place. Now when you do that, it not only creates the instrument, it also creates a mix channel at the top. And this is what's in the mixer. So over here in the mixer, that channel has appeared, which is this, which this synth is routing into. Down the bottom here in the sequencer, the track has also been created for this instrument. And the names on it will change depending on the preset that I'm using. So if I change the preset, it'll change in every place. The color remains consistent, the naming remains consistent. Everything is now designed to work together in that way. In the original Reason, you had to do all the routing and cabling yourself. You had to create a mixer, you had to then create an instrument and then plug them together. All that detail is still there. If you press the tab key and go to the back of the rack, essentially, it shows you the actual cabling. But all of this is now done far more automatically. It's set that up for you so that if you don't want to delve into this, you don't have to. You can, however, unplug everything and plug it in however you want to do. But I mean, I would suggest that part of the the joy of software is that you don't have to deal with all the cabling. But so with this, the audio output of the subtractor is just plugged straight into this mixer channel device here, which is reflected here. It could not be simpler. Can I then play this synth? Yes, absolutely I can, because this channel that I've created, this track that I've created here, has the master MIDI input selected for it, so I can play it. Let's add another synth. We'll go to our browser at the side, click on Instruments, we'll go down to Thor, and we'll bring that over. As I bring it over, as I drag it and drop it, it can either replace what's there, you get this little icon here which tells you it's going to replace what's there, or if I put it to the bottom or to the top, it will suggest that it's going to be added. So I'll put it down here to add it to my rack. It's created a track channel and a mixer channel. It's all ready to go for making music. Part of the workflow, part of the key part of the new Reason 8 workflow is that this browser on the left is fully adaptable and intelligent. So as we've dropped the Thor into there, it's automatically selected the Thor patches from the factory sound bank. So those are instantly available there. There's this kind of highlight system they've got going on where the old patch select button, which was here, where you would click a folder that would open a browser window and you would have to try to find your presets. This is now highlighted in orange, and that is supposed to mirror this highlight at the top that says that this is orange. So these two things are currently connected. If you were to click away or to click onto something else, then that connection is lost. And you can re-establish it by selecting your synth and clicking the folder button at the top, and that then goes back to the patches for that instrument. Again, I can drag and drop like you can an instrument. I can drag new presets upon that instrument directly from there, or I can search through whatever it is that I'm after. The drag and drop functionality is actually true throughout the program, so I don't actually need to drop an instrument there to load an instrument. I can drop a preset and it'll do exactly the same thing. So if I take another preset from the Thor patches, and rather than dragging it on my existing Thor, if I drag it beneath, it will create a brand new Thor, a brand new track, a brand new mixer channel for another Thor. I think I can also drag down to the sequencer window and it will do exactly the same thing. The same icon comes up to replace or to add, so I can add yet another one. And you've got a mixer channel's turned up, the device is turned up, and the track is turned up in the sequencer. So the ability to add instruments, to have it all wired up, and to instantly start playing is excellent. It's fantastic. I love all of that. I love the new browsing patching thing, so it automatically brings up what I'm using. So that's an overview of the general workflow through Reason. Let's pick up on a couple of points to do with the rack. There's no new content in Reason 8. It's all the same stuff that you had in Reason 7, except for the SoftTube guitar and amp effects. Reason doesn't support VST instruments or VST plugins. It has its own format called rack extensions, where developers can write a plugin which then plugs directly into the rack. And although that means that Reason is missing out on a huge resource of sonic possibilities, it can actually do many things that VST instruments can't. To give you a quick example, I've got the subtractor set up here with a matrix pattern sequencer running it. Very simple. And I'm going to use elements of the subtractor to affect a completely different synth. So let's run this through. Let's go to the back. I'm going to split out the matrix to run this Maelstrom synth at the bottom here. So they're now both playing. I'm going to take an LFO and run it through the subtractor. You can hear that. Then going to take that LFO and plug it into the filter on the Maelstrom. So I now have the LFO affecting the filter here, but also affecting the filter on the Maelstrom. That is something that's stunningly easy to do in Reason and pretty much impossible to do in any other sequencer or in any other VST instrument. And that's why Reason is so flipping cool. Of course, if you need to use VST instruments or other plugins, you can use Propellerheads Rewire technology to route Reason through another piece of software such as Cubase or Pro Tools and use the two through each other, alongside each other, completely in sync. So you get the best of everything. Let's have a look at the sequencer. I've opened a demo song here just to give us something that has a whole load of stuff on it. And it's laid out in a, as you'd expect a sequencer to be laid out, with the timeline and the list of tracks. It's one of the places where I would get lost in previous versions of Reason. I was not always sure what I was doing or what was going on. But in looking at Reason 8, this seems to have been simplified and streamed down, and it's a very clean look. I really like the flatness and the way this is laid out. It's very pleasing. So hopefully this is going to be a much simpler experience. There's some things I still don't understand or like, I suppose, in that I can select a track, but I can't sort of alter the size of it, the track height, individually by itself. I can't sort of maximize that one and look at it really well. Well, I can, but not in a way that I want to. I have a plus and minus increased track height here, but it actually doesn't go very far, and it affects all of them at once. There's a magnifying glass which does a similar thing on the toolbar here, which I can make the whole thing get slightly bigger, and then it starts going in that direction. But in order to get into the actual clip, you have to press Control E, which takes you to the editor, like so. And now I can use these little plus and minus keys up here to look into it in a little bit more detail. On a MIDI track, it will take you to the piano roll. One of the additions with Reason 8 is that you can actually pull the note forward to extend its length as well as backwards, whereas previously you could only pull it backwards and then move it to where you want it to go. Now you can push it forwards as well in that way, so note length is a little bit more flexible. You've got your usual kind of things down the bottom here, for which you need a pen. Plus you've got all your automation down here as well. Any automation that you create or record in any instrument will appear here. One thing it doesn't have is any kind of right-click toolbar. You have to select everything from this toolbar here. You can add notes by double-clicking, which is something you couldn't do before, as well as using the pencil tool. It's all there. Where it's not, though, is in place. You can't edit in place. You have to always open the editor, which most other bits of software can let you edit directly on that track, which is kind of what I'm talking about, being able to expand the track big enough to be able to edit directly on it. That's not there yet in Reason 8. One cool feature which has a lot to do with the consistency they're going for in Reason 8 is that if you move one of your blocks around, one of your clips around, and drop it onto another track, it adopts the color of that track, which is quite nice, which means that you don't end up with this kind of a color map all over the place. It keeps everything in place. It keeps everything consistent through the mixer, through the clips, through everything else. And I think that's really interesting. As I mentioned before, you can drop devices directly into the sequencer. So if I want to pop another Thor in there, I can do so. If I want to create an audio track, I can do that from the utilities part of the browser, audio track down here, and I can drag that in and drop it in. I can also right click and get create audio track there as well. And so for this is where you can start adding vocals, guitars, add other instrument sounds directly into Reason. I can also add effects directly into the sequencer as well. So for instance, I can pick up the the SoftTube amplifier, drop it onto my audio track, or rather drop it beneath it, I suppose, so it automatically wires in. This will kind of throw you into the rack. So this is our audio track that we've added, which shows us the sound card input that's going to be used and also metering, and then it's added the amplifier directly to it. If we turn it around, we can see how that's plugged in and out as an insert effect. And we'll look at those amplifiers in a minute. Other things of note within the sequencer page, you have this kind of overview at the bottom here, which also allows you to zoom in and out quite quickly. It shows you what you can actually see at one time on the screen, which is really nice. I like that. You can actually move it around very, very quickly and easily. Whoop. The transport bar has been refreshed and minimalized, although maximized, as in it's kind of bigger and clearer and laid out with, it just looks much cleaner than it used to be, although it still has all the same sort of information on there and all the things that you'd expect. There's no craziness going on here. Onto the mixer. Wow. So that's quite a thing. If you're unfamiliar with an analog mixer, then that's going to be quite overwhelming. What you've got to do is break it down into sections. So at the bottom, you've got your fader, you've got your mute and solo buttons, and you've got your pan. So the standard mixer fare that you would see. The next chunk is send effects. So you would send part of your signal out to an effect that's loaded in the rack, and it would be mixed with the dry signal. Then you've got the EQ section that's all done on knobs, very beautifully. After that, you've got a dynamic section where you've got a limiter and a compressor and a gate that you can apply to each channel. So that's built into the console. And at the top, you've got your signal path or your routing. So, you know, if any of that's scary, just ignore it. But otherwise, it's a very comprehensive mixer. On the right-hand section, you can see what all the various sends are. So at the moment, we've got a big reverb here that if we click on, it takes it to where it is. It takes us, rather, to where it is in the rack, so you can edit it. So if we solo a track, like over here, you can turn on the send effect and send out as much level to it as you like. Going up here, the EQ, turn on a low pass filter. You can also open a spectrum window which shows you what the EQ is doing. So Propellerheads have come to understand that just having a bunch of knobs like that isn't necessarily using what visuals in a computer program can do. Move up to the dynamics, you've got a compressor and a gate which you can hear kicking in there. You've also got a master compressor there at the top. And then here you've got your input gain for the channel and also how it's routing. And you've got different routing options. As with the rack, you've got this band down the side which allows you to very quickly navigate up and down to the bit of the mixer that you want. When Propellerheads brought the mixer in, it was really kind of unexpected because you had a mixer that was built into the rack and everyone was getting used to plugging that together and how that worked. So this seemed to be like some huge thing that you were plugging in to an otherwise very stripped down and analog situation. But actually, it's very, very comprehensive. It's fantastically powerful once you get under the skin, and it's just a sort of thing that brings Reason from being a fun place to play with synths into a real digital audio workstation. So those are the highlights of the three main Reason screens. Without really going into any detail, there's tons of depth you can get to in there, and there's plenty of videos out there that will show you how to do it. But just as an overview, those are all the bits. If this screen seems a little bit cluttered, then thankfully you can detach various bits and have them run in their own window. So for instance, the mixer, I can run that in its own window. I could run that down here. I could use my multi-touch on it like that, which is brilliant. I can do the same with the rack. I can release that into a window of its own and have that sitting somewhere else. Maybe up there, maybe down here. And then, of course, you have the sequencer window by itself. What you can't do is you can't take the sequencer window out. So I actually quite like the way that the mixer and the rack can sit there and work together. But I can't split the sequencer window off to do that. All I can do is split those two windows off separately. I don't really know why that is. It seems a bit of a kind of a strange oversight. So I can pull out the mixer. Simple. I can pull out the rack. That's great, which leaves me with the sequencer, I suppose. So I could put the sequencer down here, which is actually what I really want to do. But I'd quite like the rack and the mixer to be combined in that window like they were before. But they can't be. So, I don't know. Anyway, that's just a preference from my side. Let's check out the new SoftTube Amps. I've created an audio track down on the sequencer. Here's the bit on the rack. Now I can pick up my effect, SoftTube Amp, and drop it next to it, and it should automatically wire itself in. There you go. Automatically all just wired in for me. And it's in orange, it's gone here. The browser has automatically and intelligently given me the list of presets for the amp. Nice. What you've got is you've got gain, bass, mid and treble and a power amp gain. You've got 4 different types of amplifier, a twang, a crunch, a rock, a lead, and you've got 4 different cabinets, bright room, fat and tight. You know, not masses going on there, but simple and effective. And you've got a list of presets which cover kind of American clean, British drive, high gain, and a couple of other ones at the end. All the usual things you'd expect to find. In all the styles I can't play. How good is it? It's really hard to say. I mean, SoftTube have got a great reputation for their amp modelings. It is a simple thing. You can compare it to the Line 6 one, which has been there in a previous version. To my terrible ears, the SoftTube one sounds sort of bigger and wider. The Line 6 one feels sort of narrow in tone. So, you know, for my money, I think the SoftTube one is great. It's better than what was there before. It's a great addition to Reason. But how many Reason users are actually going to be using guitars? I don't think a massive proportion of them, a fair few, but I think the majority of Reason users are going to be more electronic music focused. And so this perhaps is not a particularly exciting thing. Let's try the bass amp out. Now, I confess to not really knowing jiggery pokery about bass guitars. One thing Reason lacks is any kind of tuner. But you've got simple controls, drive, bass, middle and mid frequency. And treble, and overall volume. So there you have it, the bass amp. A couple of my gripes then, some of the things that don't really seem to work for me, or at least aren't there yet. The first one, to me, is a complete no-brainer, but I don't know, it doesn't seem to work. When you load up a couple of synths, That's fine, you load it. The little arrow here tells you that that's what your master keyboard is controlling, and that's fine. And if I want to play the other synth, I simply click on it down here and I can play it. That's brilliant. However, what you can't do is change that in the rack, or actually anywhere else other than the sequencer. So if I'm focusing on the rack and I'm playing the Thor here, that's fine, but I want to adjust the bass line which is beneath it. I can click on it, I can double click it, I can select it, I can right click it and alt click it and whatever I like. I can do nothing which is going to allow me to direct my MIDI keyboard to that. I have to open the sequencer, I have to find it, the track, I have to click on the icon. Now I can do it. If I go back to the rack and I've done what I wanted to do in here, now when I go back to the Thor, again, double click, crazy click, any sort of clicking is not going to make that happen. I have to go to the sequencer. There is a sequencer button here which takes me directly to that track, so at least it's not too much of a ball ache to go and find it. But I don't understand why that can't be done. Similarly in the mixer, there's nothing I can do to make the MIDI input select the channel that I'm actually currently selected or on, and I don't know why they would decide not to implement something like that. One thing I've noticed on the amp effects is that when you have the highlight on, the highlight here, the intelligent browser is connected to this, I double click and it loads the next preset. But if I then go and edit something, if I change any of these knobs here, the orange bit disappears. So when I then go back thinking, oh, okay, I don't want that one, another one, I double click it, it creates a brand new one rather than dropping it on the existing one because that orange thing has gone away. Again, I can change patches here, it's changing it here, it's changing it here. I move that, it loses that focus, so I double click and I've now got 3 amps going. That can't be right, can it? If I drop in another effect, yeah, that happens as well. It seems to be an effect thing. So I don't know quite what that's about, but that's bugging me as well. So those particular workflow issues aside, Reason 8 is a continuation of an extraordinary piece of software, which is very creative, very hands-on, very intuitive. And certainly now with the enhancements they've done to the workflow, it's less confusing, it's more consistent, you can find your way about a heck of a lot easier. There's a load more depth that we could go to, but this isn't a tutorial, this is kind of give you an overview of Reason 8 and the bits that I like, the bits that I don't like. And I hope that my sort of bumbling, mumbling nonsense has been in some way helpful in showing you what Reason 8 can do. For me, the improvement in the workflow is wonderful. It's like the things that used to baffle me have now kind of clicked together in a coherent and consistent way. I don't feel that I'm going to get lost anymore, which means I can spend more time concentrating on making the music rather than worrying about navigating my way through the software. The noise on the internet is that there's not really enough in there to justify 129 euros for the upgrade. There's like, you know, a new browser, a couple of guitar effects that only a few people are going to use. I would say that the redesign of the workflow does warrant a new version. But for a program that puts its focus in having a really cool rack of gear, Propellerheads have been perhaps a bit stingy in not including some kind of new instrument or sampler. I mean, the NNXT is really looking long in the tooth now. And perhaps an updated sampler that supports contact library and has the same sort of articulation and phrasing controls that a more up-to-date VSTi has, you know, that could have been something special for this version. So yeah, overall Reason 8 is a great piece of work, but perhaps Propellerheads could have been a bit more generous. Thanks for watching, see you next time. Please subscribe, find us on Facebook, give us a call, and if you need a fantastic computer for making music on, then give me a call.